So, I'm actually going to start off this video with two quick disclaimers, which I don't normally start off with disclaimers, but these are things that I would like to start off with. First of all, this is a fairly newly discovered trick that we still don't understand how everything works. So, I'm not quite going to be explaining everything super thoroughly because, like I said, it's still new. We don't quite understand everything quite yet. But I will do my best to explain what we do understand. I have accidentally activated some spiders here, so let me just go ahead and kill these guys. But the second thing I want to explain is that, we don't quite, I'm going to be simplifying a lot of things down quite a bit for the sake of explaining things. So, right now, you can see me in a bunch of combat, and you can see that I'm switching between my different weapons, mostly right now between the sword and the stick. And as you already know, the sword and stick both have different damage outputs, and the stones also have a different damage output compared to the two of those. Now, I'm going to be using some terms in this video, and those terms are, I'm going to be talking about type of attack and weapon of attack quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and throw out some obvious information right off the bat here, and that is this information right here. When I talk about the type of attack, I'm talking about the actual type of attack, so like a slash attack, or a jump attack, or in the case of stones, a throw attack. And when I talk about the weapon of attack, I'm talking about the specific weapon that I'm actually holding when I do that attack, or rather the weapon that's equipped when I do the attack, which I'll be explaining here in a second. But basically, obviously, you have three different types of attacks in this game. One is just the slash attack, which looks like that. You just kind of do a slash, and you can do that with the sword or the stick. The second type of attack is obviously your jump attack, which you can do with the stick, or if your meter is fully charged, you can do it with the sword. But obviously, I can't right now. And the third type of attack can generally only be done with rocks, and that is the throw attack, which obviously you just throw a rock, and it hits the enemy and does damage. Now, the reason that I'm explaining about the type of attack and the weapon of choice is because you could actually manipulate it a little bit. Generally, the game, there's not actually a table in the code as far as I can tell, but I've created a table of what you might think of when you look at the game's attacks, which kind of looks like this. As you can see, obviously, if you're doing a slash attack with a stick, you're doing a stick slash. If you're doing a jump attack with a sword, you're doing a sword jump attack. And stones are in their own little column off to the right. But actually, the thing that the game uses to determine these attacks actually looks more like this. And as you can see, there are some attacks on here that just shouldn't work. I've kind of highlighted the different colors here, with, like, the greens are the attacks that you would normally expect to work, and the oranges or yellows, or whatever you want to call, are the attacks that you wouldn't normally expect to work. Like, there shouldn't be a way to, for example, do a slash attack with stones. I'm going to repeat that. There should not be a way that you can do a slash attack with stones. However, there's a little quirk in the game's code where, you'll notice when I switch weapons, Bilbo does this little, weapon switch animation, but during the weapon switch animation, he's technically already switched to his next weapon, and you can see that by looking at the weapon meter. The moment that I hit that button, the weapon in the weapon meter changes immediately. But he still does that animation where he switches over to the weapon, so it's not quite fully switched over yet. So let's say that I'm holding the sword, and I press the button to switch the weapon. Well, obviously the next weapon over is the rocks. So what happens if I'm holding the sword and I switch over the weapon, and while that weapon switch animation is occurring, I decide to press the attack button? Will he attack with the sword, or will he attack with the rocks? Well, the answer is, he does a slash attack, but he does it while holding rocks. So in this case, the game is going to actually bring up one of those orange scenarios. In this case, it'll bring up the slash attack with stones, which doesn't have, and this is where we're not actually 100% sure of what's going on, but our theory is that there's no programmed value for slash attack with stones. So what we figured out the game does in that case is it kind of just, I'm not sure whether it's giving you an arbitrarily high value or whether it's just programming it to happen this way, but, well, let me just show you what happens in that case. Let me actually get to a fight where there's normally, a super high amount of damage that you would have to deal with, such as this White Lord boss over here, who normally takes several hits to kill. Let me go and do this exact attack on him, And let me just show again what I'm doing, is I'm switching the weapon, and while the weapon switches, I'm doing an attack, so I'm slashing with rocks. Which brings up one of those normally unused scenarios. I didn't get it that time, but for some reason, obviously the value is either arbitrarily high or something going on with it, where that enemy just dies in one hit. And that works on, as far as we can tell, every enemy in the game that allows various different attacks to be done on them. So, basically every enemy except for the 3 spider bosses. So let me try to show a different trick now. There's a very similar thing that happens basically where if you're holding a rock and you switch to the sticks, he will throw the rock, but he will have the stick equipped, which obviously does the same thing. You can actually see the rock fly off into the distance, but because he has the stick equipped, the same thing's actually going to happen when we do that, where the game will think that we've done a thrown attack with our stick, which isn't a programmed possibility in the game's code. So what will happen in this case is, once again, the enemy will just die in one hit. That is the best that I'm going to try to do at explaining that trick, because obviously this is a trick that we do not fully understand yet. But feel free to try it yourself. Feel free to mess around with it. It can kill, as far as I've been able to figure out, most enemies in just one hit. The only ones who I've found that it doesn't work with are the 3 spider bosses. And I will state for the record, the method of swinging your rocks does not work on the PC version. There's something different about the animation. I'm not sure what it is, but the method with throwing a rock while a different weapon is equipped, this method right here, absolutely does work on PC, and is in general a lot more consistent on most enemies anyway. I found that, and I even kind of accidentally showed it off in this video, the swung rock method doesn't work every single time. I'm not quite sure what causes it to work sometimes and what causes it to not work other times, but like I said, that's the best that I'm going to try to do at actually explaining that trick. I'll let other people figure out the rest of the details, but for reference, I'm going to end this video by declaring that because I'm the one who found this trick, I'm naming it, and I am naming the trick Super Ultra Mega Meta Rock, or SUMM Rock. Because that way, every time I do the trick, I can end off by declaring, wow, that's SUMM Rock.